Can you use voiceover and narration in your sitcom script? It's a question that comes up quite a lot because people see it used on TV, but then they hear via other writers that it's frowned upon, that producers don't want to see it, that it's bad form, bad technique or whatever. And so let me just address the reason why it's got a bad rap and how it can work. And I've got 4 reasons as to how you can use it well. And I speak as someone who's written episodes of a sitcom called Miranda, which has voiceover and direct to camera. It doesn't have voiceover, but it's breaking the fourth wall, looking straight down the barrel, and she sort of talks directly to the audience, which is another kind of form of voiceover. So I've thought about this a fair bit. And the reason, though, I think that it's got a bad rap is because it can be easily used very badly. It might be, for example, a book that's been converted into a movie, and essentially the writer hasn't really done the work by showing and not telling. And so we've basically got the book being read out with pictures. And that's poor storytelling, or at least it's very poor use of the medium in which you are telling the story. So when I read voiceover in scripts, and I can read your script if you would like and give you some professional advice on the script and your career, there's a link to that below in the show notes. But if I read it, I tend to find that it's a way of just telling the audience what to think, and it is telling rather than showing. It's telling backstory, it's telling exposition, it's telling what we're already seeing, it's kind of commenting on what we're seeing, and it's not terribly insightful or helpful. And in those situations, I tend to say, get rid of it, have confidence that you have characters that will tell the story. Because I guess a voiceover tends to be slightly more objective and therefore can say what's really going on, but not necessarily. So let's get into 4 good ways of using narration and voiceover in a sitcom. And one is that kind of counterpoint. One of my favourite sitcoms is the first 3 series of Arrested Development, and the use of voiceover in that is amazing because it sometimes basically says, somebody says something and they make some great big statement, and Ron Howard's voice says, it didn't, or it just says, that didn't ever happen, or whatever. So you get that really strong counterpoint that is giving you that strong juxtaposition, which is really funny. So they use it in Arrested Development, and we don't really know who that voice is. It's completely disembodied. I know it's not a sitcom, but Desperate Housewives has got a voice that is one of the people who has been killed. There's a lady who was killed at the start, and this is how she got murdered, and she's like back from the dead explaining it. That's the other issue around voiceover, is like, who is it? Why are they saying this? And Arrested Development, we don't know who that is, and it doesn't matter, I don't think. So that's the problem. This stuff is all very murky, and it's not obvious when it matters and when it doesn't matter. And so, you know, back in the day, Modern Family started out as a spoof sitcom where they're kind of looking at the camera occasionally, and then they kind of stopped doing it because it turns out they kind of don't need it. So the grammar of TV and the what is allowed and what isn't allowed is often quite, it just changes, and sometimes things just don't matter anymore. And that's just the way things are. Sorry about that. So counterpoint is the first. You're getting the opposite view. And then there's a sort of a version of this, which is the second point, which is it gives you a deeper insight into what that character is really thinking. And that really is the point of what's going on. You've got someone and we're seeing their thoughts, we're hearing their thoughts. The British show Peep Show made a virtue of that. It was originally called, when it started out, I think it was going to be called POV, point of view. And so you could see and hear what they're thinking, but they would never say what they're thinking because it's just too awful to contemplate. So that is a deeper insight into a particular character, into what they're really thinking. And again, it gives you a counterpoint or juxtaposition for what we're seeing and what they're thinking and what they're saying. And that's just one way to go. You can do that. It's good that not every show does that, but some shows can do that. And then I guess that leads into the third one, which is how a voiceover can really get you much deeper into the personality of the character and their hopes and their dreams and a really good use of that, and I haven't seen it for years, is the sitcom Scrubs, which is from JD's point of view. And so you hear what he's thinking, and it kind of works. It kind of gets you into his world, his mind, his head, and it shows you that this show is about him and his perspective. And, you know, he's like this optimistic person. Great use of a theme tune. I can't do it, or I'm all on my own. I'm no Superman. It's just a really nice world, and the voiceover really helps it. And so it can be used. You also get it in My Name is Earl, where he explains who he is and why he's doing what he's doing, and it just kind of moves it along, really. And we'll talk about that in a second. But I guess that breaking of the fourth wall also gives you that personal, character-driven development. And I think it's very invitational. So in Miranda, she lets you into her world. Hello, chums. You know, you're there on the sofa. She's just talking directly to you. It's very personal. And as long as you do that well and it's funny, then it can work. And then finally, there's this sense of story efficiency. So in My Name is Earl, they do it a bit. In Arrested Development, they do it a lot. That voiceover in Arrested Development means you can absolutely fly through plot in that show. That really moves fast, and it keeps lots of plates spinning, and it's sort of moving backwards and forwards. And meanwhile, this and this has happened, and remember this, and flashbacks and flash forwards, and the connecting of jokes and that kind of stuff. So it's like pouring petrol on the show. It's an accelerant. It just really, really makes it go faster. So again, a voiceover can be used in that way. I gather Everyone Hates Chris also does that. I've never seen that show, but I'm sure you can think of lots of examples. I think Derry Girls uses it. Again, I've not seen Derry Girls, In-Betweeners as well. So why don't you leave a comment in below about shows that use voiceover and that use it well, and also how difficult you find it when you do it and you don't know if you're doing it right or not. So it'll be interesting to see what you have to say about that. Anyway, that one just leapt into my head. I just hit record, having made a couple of notes, and that's what I've been thinking about. And again, if you want me to read your script, then go follow the link below, and I can do you a proper professional service. Someone with 25 years of experience, which is what I've got. That's when I started out. My first sitcom was on BBC Radio 4 in 2001. And so I've been doing this a while. So if you want some proper professional consultancy on your script, then come to me. Thanks for watching. Speak to you next time. Cheerio.